Life as an adult is an intricate tapestry woven with threads of ambition, love, and resilience. Each day unfurls with the promise of new beginnings and the burden of past mistakes. Yet, amidst the careful planning and determined strides, there lingers the specter of unforeseen events. These unexpected twists of fate, like bolts of lightning in a clear sky, have the power to unravel even the sturdiest of foundations. Now, as tragedy looms on the horizon, I can't help but wonder, were these unforeseen events merely chance, or were they orchestrated by a sinister hand? This is the terrible story of Karina Vetrano. Come and join us as we unravel this horrific crime.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty.
In August 2016, Karina, a 30-single woman, went for a run on a nearby path late in the afternoon, not thinking it would be dangerous. However, she never returned. This is the terrible circumstance facing Karina Vetrano. The pride and delight of her parents, Philip and Kathy Vetrano, Karina Ann was born on July 12, 1986 in New York. Many people adored her. She was a beautiful woman. Following her master's degree in speech pathology from St. John's University, Karina focused on dealing with children who had autism, showcasing her aptitude from a young age. Apart from her outstanding profession as a speech pathologist, she also enjoyed writing and exploring new places. She was also employed part-time in Astoria, Queens as a club promoter. Less than a block from her Howard Beach, Queens house was Spring Creek Park, where Karina used to go for late afternoon runs. Her father would often go with her, but on August 2, 2016, he made the decision to stay behind due to a painful back. Before heading out to the park, Karina had promised her father that she would be back in time for dinner. As night fell and Karina hadn't answered her phone, her father attempted to get in touch with her but got no response. Phil contacted a friend who worked for the New York Police Department because he had a feeling something wasn't right. After the buddy organized a search party quickly, Phil Vetrano found his daughter's body around 100 feet off the main trail, about 11 p.m. She was discovered completely nude, covered in scrapes and bruises, in the most disturbing state. The next day, the autopsy report came out stating that she had been sexually assaulted and maybe strangled. It wasn't long before her death was ruled a homicide. Her body's bruises gave the investigators a theory about what happened. She might have been hit in the head by a rock. Subsequently, she fought her assailant fiercely, biting him till her teeth broke. After the struggle, her attacker's DNA was found on her back under her fingernails, and her phone was found next to the DNA in the grass. The detectives had hoped for an instant lead, but things didn't work out that way. Both local and national databases were searched for the DNA, but nothing was found. Due to the futile nature of the DNA search, it seemed that the perpetrator did not exist. They began to consider alternative possibilities, so they asked for any security footage from the area that would have shown Karina walking into Spring Creek Park by herself. Karina's pals said that Paul was one of her co-workers from the nightclub, and that he had approached her inappropriately. As part of their investigation, the police began questioning Paul, and that's how they found out that he might be a suspect. A few days after Karina's family press conference was shown, another possible witness came to light. He helped produce a composite sketch that was distributed by the media right away, claiming to have seen a suspicious-looking individual in the area within the police timeline. Then, a former NYPD chief claimed over the phone that someone in his building fit the sketch's description. The individual, who went by Kevin, was visited by the police right away, but he refused to cooperate. His refusal to give a sample of his DNA raised further doubts about him. Nevertheless, when they analyzed the DNA they ultimately obtained from him, it did not fit the profile associated with Karina's murder scene. There were no more leads after that one, which left the cops trapped. A GoFundMe page was created with the goal of raising $250,000 for the person with information that led to Karina's killer's arrest. The account brought in more than $290,000, yet nothing was deposited in January 2017 for 6 months following her passing. Lieutenant Russo, one of the investigating police officers, had a revelation. The cops, who lived at Howard Beach as well, remembered a strange episode that happened a few months before the murder. He told about a suspicious-looking individual who lived one home over on the opposite side of the street and seemed to be going about his business. "I saw someone walking away from me, and even though it was 80 degrees outside, he was wearing a long-sleeved tracksuit and a hoodie over his head. I thought that was strange, and Russo wanted to question him right away, but couldn't because the man fled immediately out of sight. He asked the same young man right away when he spotted him strolling down the street again. Subsequently, it was discovered that the man's name was Chanel Lewis. Although fellow detective Barry Brown believed it was improbable, Russo proposed a more audacious course of action, obtaining Lewis's DNA and contacting him. The cops had previously believed the culprit to be a male Caucasian, but investigators broadened their investigation after Russo hinted that the culprit might be African American. More than 300 black men's DNA samples were gathered, but none of them matched. Despite having no past criminal history and very few run-ins with the law, Lewis was cautioned for violating the law in Spring Creek Park twice and for publicly peeing. Furthermore, a caller to 911 claimed to have seen a suspicious-looking person in several residences' backyards wielding a crowbar. Lewis was pulled up immediately for questioning, despite not having been charged in this crime. This was an unexpected development as his DNA samples matched those recovered on Karina. He was detained and charged with 1 count of second-degree murder on February 4, 2017, following many hours of questioning during which the police were able to extract a confession. Chanel Lewis, who was unemployed at the time and 20 years old, lived with his parents and siblings in a deplorable housing project in East New York, not far from the crime scene. It would have been more difficult to assume Lewis was guilty for the murder if his high school instructor hadn't brought up his dislike of women and the incident that made him ask to bring a knife to class the next day. When asked why, he said he wanted to stab every girl. He was often placed in protective care and was suspended from school due to his mental instability. Investigators assert that on August 2nd, after a fight with his family, Lewis walked to the park and left his home. He was a frequent visitor to the park, so it's probable that he had previously seen Karina before he approached her and attacked her without cause. Lewis's father made an effort to protect him by saying that Lewis needed to go to the hospital the day following the murder, but this unintentionally gave the police access to additional vital information. Remember how Karina's fight with the attacker resulted in a chipped tooth? During the process, the doctor informed the police that he had removed Karina's tooth from Lewis's palm. His mother's testimony, according to which he appeared disheveled upon his return that evening, provided further evidence, and when Lewis entered a not guilty plea to the counts of murder and sexual assault on November 5, 2018, during the first murder trial, despite having confessed to the crime on camera, the police were certain they had identified the murderer. Lewis's counsel contended that the way he looked on the tape, as if he didn't understand the gravity of his crimes, had driven him to confess. Lewis even wanted to watch cartoons. Robert Moeller, one of his attorneys, told the Wall Street Journal in a statement, "It was going nowhere. They were starting to get, I don't want to use the word desperate, but they need to solve the case. So along comes somebody and the profile fits." The attorneys also implied that the DNA had been altered to serve their agenda. A court ruled a mistrial on November 21, 2018, after a hung jury returned 7 guilty and 5 not guilty votes. In March 2019, Lewis was convicted on 1 count of first-degree murder, 2 counts of second-degree murder, and 1 count of sexual assault. The next year was set aside for a retrial. But before his sentencing date, the defense attorneys received an anonymous letter from a bogus police officer, which abruptly changed the course of the case. His attorney's allegations of coercion were deemed insufficient when fresh information provided the court with an extensive record of his searches conducted before his apprehension. He asked concerns concerning various publications about Karina's murder, plea agreements, prosecution, and indictments. The letter disclosed that prior to concentrating on Lewis, the police had collected DNA samples from more than 360 black men who had been arrested in different regions of Queens, Brooklyn. It was disclosed that the police, having at first thought the murderer to be a white male, had impulsively reversed the course of their inquiry. The judge denied the detectives' request for a hearing to determine whether the prosecutors had withheld crucial evidence because the prosecution argued that the letter was meant to undermine the proceedings because it showed racial profiling. After a thorough investigation by the NYPD, the district attorney for Queens stated that Chanel Lewis is unquestionably the person who killed Karina Vetrano. On April 13, 2019, after a 2-year investigation into the matters covered by the anonymous 11th hour letter, a missive full of lies and threats, Lewis was given a life sentence without the chance of release.
Hey, thanks for sticking with us today. Check out this other thrilling videos for you to watch, and while you're at it, hit that subscribe and like button, and let us know down below your thoughts on today's case. Until then, take care.